What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of What's Up Bree. It's your girl Bree here, and if you take it back to season 2 of What's Up Bree, I did an episode and I had two guests on, Ashley and Marquise, and they discussed being in the foster care system, how it was being a foster child. So today's episode is going to be a spin off of that. I have Courtney here with me, who participates in social work. So let the people know who you are.
My name is Courtney. I work for the child welfare system here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I have been there for 3 years.
Alrighty, so this will allow us to get a deeper look into kind of what actually goes behind in the child welfare system. So I'm glad you guys tuned in because it's going to be a good episode. So jumping right into it, what motivated you to become a social worker?
So I actually grew up in a household of foster children
Okay.
that weren't biologically related to me. My mom was a foster parent probably from the age, I would say I was probably like in 6th grade all the way through high school. So we just constantly had children in and out of our home. And then as I grew, I began to realize that I love to help people.
Mhm.
Like everything that I was doing, it was always something to help somebody else. And I originally went to the medical field, failed biology 3 times. This ain't for me. And then I was like, you know what? I've always loved working with people, and I used to do a lot of volunteer opportunities in the community, a lot of different events, especially within actually this district, District 7, I worked with closely.
Mhm.
And then eventually I just fell into it kind of.
Okay.
And just like I said, being raised with foster children, always had kind of the perspective of making sure I advocated for the voices that were unheard. Because I did tune into that episode from the first season, and a lot of it was true. And a lot of those things that made me upset that were happening to like my foster brothers and sisters.
Mhm.
And in my mom's household, she never let us use the word foster.
Okay.
It was your brother, it was your sister. Ain't no foster. I don't care who asked you, who doing what.
We all family.
And that's how my mom wrote. So with that, it just pushed me to make sure that their voices were always heard because there's always children in the system.
It sure is. That's dope. That's real dope. Being able to like grow up and then be able to assist, and then now you're kind of carrying on what your mom did. That's dope. Okay, so what type of education did you have to obtain? Because I know some people want to get into social work. I hear people talking about it all the time. So what exactly do you need?
So for my actual job and position, contrary to popular belief, you do not need a degree for DMCPS.
Oh.
We don't require a degree. It's based on experience. You, of course, do get compensated for more of a degree and different things like that.
Okay.
Oftentimes when you go into like social work field of like being in schools or different things like that, they require the bachelor's or the master's, depending on what type of position you're taking. But on the state level, you do not need a degree. And a lot of people don't know about that.
I was going to say, so if you are looking to help the underprivileged children and you feel like, school is not for me, because school isn't for everybody, you are able to still become a social worker. So that is a thing.
Yes.
Okay. So what does a day-to-day workload look like for you?
So for me, I work first shift, so it's supposed to be 8 to 5. But depending on what my caseload is or what my home visits look like, I personally don't believe in others having to take off work in order to like meet with me or see me. So a lot of the times I'm going till about 6, 7, trying to get like that mom who's getting off at 5 who may need a visit later than that or needs to put her kids' dinner on first. So my typical workload, I come in, I'm checking emails. We get referrals daily. Milwaukee is actually one of the counties where we cover a lot of the surrounding areas as well. So we're kind of all put in one compared to like other smaller states. So our referral rate is very high. So I'm looking at referrals that I'm getting, kind of setting up what my school visits look like, home visits are looking like, and then just trying to figure out whether or not I have to do like CAC visits, which is the Child Advocacy Center, which is basically like our medical team of getting kids seen. So it's never the same day.
It's always ever changing.
It's always ever changing. You just never know because different people have different stories and situations. But it's typically a 8 to 5, 8 to
Typically,
6.
okay. I mean, that could be exciting too, especially for people that get bored easily. Like if
Yes.
you have something to do or it's like a different pace day to day, it's like I always got to be somewhere or talking to somebody or doing something.
And that was one of my main reasons for not going into ongoing, which is, for people who don't know, is when you've already entered the foster care system, you usually get what's called an ongoing case manager, and they work with you for reunification.
Mhm.
I had worked in that field, kind of doing visitation and doing like community outreach, and I got bored. Like I felt like I was with families way too long. There were certain systems that I couldn't help families beat. And I used to get upset. I was always like mad, like, they just need this resource, or they just need this, and now they have to go through X, Y, and Z hoop, or all these court orders and different things. So that's what actually pushed me to get into initial assessment, which is what most people know as basic CPS, like the one who knocks on the door after we get the referral, is because now I go in and I make decisions on whether or not a child should even enter the foster care system,
Okay.
versus being that reactive side of ongoing. I wanted to be proactive.
Okay, and I think that's a good idea too, because I know I get bored easily. I tell it all the time. I might have ADHD. I don't know. I need to be looking at something different on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so what are some of the reasons a child can actually be pulled from a home? Because a lot of people, we seen it on Facebook with people, I'm gonna call CPS. Why can somebody actually be pulled from a household?
So there's different types of what we call child abuse and neglect.
Okay.
The typical ones that you will see is like physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. Those are the ones that are defined in the actual laws. Broken underneath those categories, one that a lot of people do not know about is domestic violence is a form of child abuse. So many people don't understand when I come to knocking on doors and they're like, why you here? And I'm like, well, y'all was fighting and the kids were present, or so-and-so intervened. That is a form of abuse, domestic abuse. And that's what a lot of our calls are, actually.
Okay.
They're starting to rise like no other, unfortunately, in Milwaukee. It's very sad to see. But then you got your typical ones like neglect, whether a kid is not being properly bathed, fed, clothed. And we get calls where sometimes I think people need to understand that there are laws that we have to go by, and it's not easy to pull children from homes.
Right.
You have to go in front of a judge. A DA will choose you out if you don't have the facts behind everything. So that's something that I think a lot of people don't know about too, is like, it's not as easy. We come in and people are like, oh, you the baby takers, you the baby stealers, you this, that. And it's like, I literally have to prove to a judge and a court system that this child is better off outside of the home. But like I said, of course, like physical abuse is one, marks and bruises, broken bones. We see those sad cases on the news, which is partially why I don't watch the news. I'll wait till I get to work. Because you get those sad stories of the 5-month-old with a broken skull, or the 2-year-old who's falling off the 4th story of a building for not being watched. So there's a lot of different types of child abuse and neglect.
And then our calls more so usually, like when you get calls, is it more so other family members, or is it like anonymous, or how does that usually look?
So reporting can be done anonymous. It can. What I've noticed with me working there is that a lot of our vindictive calls, so calls meaning like somebody trying to retaliate, like the family member who like, oh, she didn't watch my kids. Oh, I'm finna call CPS on her because they only got X, Y, and Z in the cabinet. A lot of those retaliation calls end up being anonymous, but you have a lot of mandated reporters, your police officers, your school teachers, the counselors, different things like that. We're more likely to get those calls because kids are in school, and that's where they spend most of their time. But then you also do get the family member or somebody in the neighborhood who's looking out too as well. But I would say for us, it's more so the mandated reporters. So the nurses, the school staff, the police officers, and different things like that.
Okay. So people that are actually seeing the kids or coming in contact with them.
Yeah.
I honestly, that was a shocker that the domestic abuse one, I did not know that if you are constantly like fighting or a kid has to intervene, that is grounds for getting your child. So please, like I always say, I know everybody has it tough, especially right now, life be lifing. Never allow somebody to physically abuse you. I don't care what's going on. There's ways that you can get help. Value yourself just a little bit more, okay? Somebody will love you. All right. So is the goal always to reunite the child with the family?
Yes. So typically what happens is when you take TPC, which is temporary physical custody, the ongoing child welfare system has about 18 months to try and reunite that child with their family. And with that becomes like the court stipulation. So whether that's drug treatment court or therapy or supervised visits or parenting classes, within those 18 months, I think Ashley had mentioned that last time she was there too, you're supposed to be working towards reunifying the children.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. Life sometimes, or some people are just not in the predicament. And 18 months might not be enough time for them. So then after that time, they have what's called a permanency hearing. Okay. And for me, I've learned a lot about it too, is that with keeping the child out of the home so long, the goal is to keep them with something familiar. So when they become to be in these households for years, 2-3 years, it's like, okay, what are we going to do realistically? And that's when they begin to look at TPR, which is a termination of parental rights. And that's when the rights are taken from the parents, and kids are usually either left in a foster care system or adopted, just depending on age.
Okay. So how do you guys decide when returning home is probably not in the child's best interest?
So for me personally, I just go through like my morals in my everyday. I'm a mom myself. So I look at what the standards say, of course, because that's what I have to go by. But then I also look about what it is for me as a parent, as well as I think for sure being an African-American working in CPS. Understanding my culture and where my people come from. So educating myself, like, is this a cultural thing that's going on? Is it something that's totally being missed? Is there just a resource that's not being put there? So I look at what the circumstance is. And for me, and my ultimate determination is whether or not if I was to pull this child from the home today, would they be better? Because I often get the question of, how can you work for CPS? How can you the people, you want to this, that? And I've always told people I've never had to feel bad about a decision that I've made.
Right.
My supervisor, the whole staff know that I will stand 10 toes down on something I feel. And the moment I'm told or instructed to do something that I feel is against my morals, I'll back off. Like, I'll leave the job in itself. Just because that's one of my main reasons for being there, is just for advocating for the children that look like me, who recognize me for who I am. So I definitely would say that as far as them being pulled out the home, it's always that look at, would they be better outside of this home temporarily? Right. Because I talk to the parents all the time, because of course I have to have conversations with the parents that I'm removing their children from, and just helping them to understand, like, you might not got it all together right now. What do you need? That partnership, I think, is one of the biggest things too, is making sure they understand that you're not the enemy.
Right.
Everybody need help. Some need more help than others, and just getting them to understand, like, what do you need me to do? And then I think another thing that I do, compared to maybe a lot of other workers, I will exalt every single resource in the book.
We need that though as a community.
Literally, because I've worked in community outreach, so I know a lot of the grassroots foundations or different things like that. So I'm exalting all those resources, and a parent really has to prove to me, like, that they can't do it, or like, I don't want to do it, because you got some who just not gonna do it. They're like, you can take them, it is what it is, I'm not gonna do it. But I know within that, when I go to court, I'm like, well, I gave them X, Y, and Z, and this, that, and that's how we got here. Which I think also helps me with my moral compass, because you do get the constant, like, oh, y'all just baby snatchers, and y'all take kids for a living, and y'all do this, that. But going by that and sticking by it day by day, even if some days it makes my work day twice as long, and I got to stay out till 10, 11 trying to find the 12th family member of who can possibly take this kid versus me taking them into the system. That's something that I'm usually willing to do, and I always do.
And I can respect that, what you're saying. Sometimes you try to say, like, is this a culture thing? Because of course we see it on TV all the time. Tyler Perry movies talk about it. You see the hardworking mom who, unfortunately, husband has died of a terminal illness, or they just had a string of bad luck, and they are literally trying. I don't know if a lot of people saw on social media. It was a young lady. She took her child to work. So she had her baby on her hip, and she was cashiering, and they were trying to take the child from her. And somebody ended up starting a GoFundMe, which was great, and raised so much money to where now she has a home. Now she has a car. Now she's able to get childcare. It takes a village to raise a child.
For sure.
And people, I think, sometimes forget that. So it's dope to have people like you in the system, to where it's like, you know what? I'm not the bad guy. I'm actually looking at it from all avenues. Help me help you. Type of situation.
Seriously. And that's what I think I lead with a lot of the times. When I come in, people don't expect me to look like me. They don't expect to have seen me out before. They like, oh, you look familiar. I be everywhere. I'm pretty sure you seen me.
Social work gotta have a life too.
But just becoming relatable. Like, I don't overly dress. I'm not dressed up every day for work. Some days I'll just come in some sweats and I might have a screen tee on. And they like, who are you? And my badge is really tucked. And I'm like, hey, I identify myself. But just making people feel comfortable and feel like people at the end of the day is something that has definitely helped me to easily gain like relationships, trust. The vulnerability that so many of my clients give me is just amazing. Like, sometimes I even applaud them for even being so open with me, knowing what my job is, because sometimes, a lot of the times, people view CPS as this power,
right?
This upper power, and you have all this power. So I'll lie to you and say, when I get to the question of, do you use alcohol or other drugs? And you got one person, and I'm like, before you even answer, I see the Hennessy bottle in the corner.
Like,
I smell the weed.
Before you give up that lie.
Let's be honest. And a lot of people don't understand, like, if you can function, that's not what we're looking at. People think that you have to be this non-drinking, non-smoking, non-doing nothing person. And it's like, no, there are. And I remember in one of our staff meetings, I'm like, they're functioning alcoholics. They're functioning drug users. Like, my dad was one of them. And I really had to speak to it because it touched me when one of the other people in the room were kind of like speaking down upon it. And I'm like, my dad was probably one of the best people to do what he did. But I knew he had an addiction. Right. I knew he was doing other things. So I think just realizing that you don't got to lie to me. Like, I tell him off the back, like, hey, I see X, Y, and Z. That's not going to be an end all be all, but I do need you to be honest. Because I do run in sometimes. They're like, nope, I don't drink. I don't smoke.
I don't do nothing.
I don't do this. I don't do that. And I'm like, you do something. Everybody got like a vice. You do something. What is it? But just making them feel comfortable. A lot of the times, another thing that I do is I share my own stories about being a mom and the struggles that I've had. My kid has gotten to a point where she A1 now, but we ain't always been there. I didn't feel like I was going to be on the caseload versus having one before. And she didn't push me to those limits. So I think sometimes just giving people your real story of being a parent and working in the field and things that you've tried or things that have helped you are also helpful, because then they start to view you as Courtney the person and not Courtney the social worker or not my worker coming in.
Okay. And that kind of tied into the next question, like, how is it working with families with you guys' service? I know, like you said, a lot of people are understanding. You try to be personable. What about those instances to where it's like, because like you said, some people look at it like, you the people, you come to take my kids.
So I have a different take on it. And I share it with almost everybody who I come in contact who asks me this question. I tell people all the time, if the people came to my door tomorrow, you better believe my daughter is going to be behind me. My hand probably going to be out. I'm probably going to tell her not to talk to y'all. What do y'all need? What do y'all want? Because this is mine. And they often look at me sideways like, but you the social worker. Why are you telling people? And I'm like, because it's really a protective capacity.
Right.
It's when people don't have that and they're like, go ahead and take them, move them around. Like, that's when I get worried and I get scared. But when people are protecting what's theirs, because we as Black people, that's what we do.
Right.
You don't enter our territory. You foreign to us. I don't care if you look like me. I definitely get those clients who literally, I done got cussed out on the porch on a hot day in front of the whole hood. And I'm like, all right.
I respect that.
Give you your 5, your 10, your whatever minutes to get whatever it is that you need to get off. Because for one, I'm catching you off guard 9 times out of 10. And then for 2, it is a protective capacity. And then at the end of it, I still explain to them, like, look, we still have to have this conversation of whatever possibly went on. And if you refuse to talk to me, I literally got to go with what's on this paper.
Right.
And I remind them that anybody can report any allegations. They can say, right now, I'm in the crack house, smoking dope. My daughter is strung out, like anything. And they will have to come to my door because there are certain things that we screen in based on what a caller says. So I just remind people that, like, hey, I get it. Have your moment. I know it's not directed towards me. I know it's more of a systematic thing of what you know and what you've been around, what you've been exposed to. Maybe a cousin kids got taken for no reason or different things like that. So I'm always understanding that when I get people who cuss me out. And literally, I don't think there's one client as of yet that I haven't been able to, at the end of them cussing me out or at the end of that visit, been able to have a civil conversation. And it usually ends with them apologizing, like, girl, that went towards you. I just, this girl down the street keep calling on me and da-da-da-da-da.
I'm frustrated.
So it's usually another barrier that's there that causes them to have those feelings, that frustration, and just realizing that it's never really me who they're taking it out on. Like I always keep that in the back of my mind, even though they go in sometimes. Like they
You
they
ain't
go
never
in.
been cussed out
Huh?
until you ain't never been cussed out until you've been cussed out by somebody who's about to lose their kid. Or
No,
been,
no, that's for
accused,
real.
I've been accused of something with their
When
kid.
you threatening them, when you
Oh, my
threatening their
goodness.
livelihood, you have never been. I mean, this one
I'm a
lady,
former mandated reporter.
Whew. This lady ripped me to shreds where I was like, oh, okay.
That's
like,
funny. This is the first time somebody.
okay. Like,
I didn't even know that cuss word.
yeah, I
Right.
mean, she had everyone in the book, but I also, like I said, I understood that was her protectiveness. Like, these kids are mine. I care about these kids. Even if she was the abuser or whatever it is, people still have feelings.
Right.
And you have to understand that in working with this field, because if I fight you with that same energy, you 9 times out of 10 ain't gonna give me the true story of what's going on. But if I let you blow it off, because I may be the first person that has ever even listened to all this ranting and raving because you cuss people out and then they cut you off and they leave. Nope, I'm gonna let you cuss me out. We're gonna sit, we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna get to the end of it. So I just make sure that I treat people like people.
This one mama cussed me out. I promise my brain slowed down. She was cussing in slow motion because I was like, I heard I was like, dang, that's a cold combination. It was like
I wish y'all could see my producer face right now.
I was like, dang.
Like, I'm gonna use that one. That's what you put in the back.
Right.
Of the
like, oh, that's cold.
okay.
I use that. I said, I ain't never been cussed out like that in my life. And I had to let her.
Yeah.
I just let her. I'm like,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Because sometimes they need that moment.
Yeah.
And I was the one who called.
Yeah.
Gotta have tough skin.
Yeah.
So how hard is it currently for children to be adopted or placed in foster care, whether it's like permanent or temporary?
It varies. So the generation, or I should say the age group that's typically harder to adopt or find permanent housing is definitely teens.
Okay.
Generally once you get about, I said it's almost like 10, 11, 12 now, the likelihood of you being placed with a family on top of being adopted is really slim to none, unfortunately. We don't have a lot of homes that are taking teenagers. I think partially it's because people think teens are hard to deal with. They kind of think they already got your mind made up. You know what you're going to do. They might fight you back idea mentality. So that's where you see a lot of the like group homes coming about. There's a lot of group homes in Milwaukee. But the smaller children typically, especially babies are the first to go. Everybody love them a baby.
Because it's like I can kind of mold you and shape you into
babies
what.
are the first to go. And then the smaller ones like the elementary kids, and then middle school is like
they're still teachable.
Yeah. And then once they get about 8th grade and on, they kind of like, no.
Like I ain't dealing with it.
But I think that's why I preach so hard about like us becoming foster parents for us. Because one of the worst things about my job sometimes is having to take a child out of their neighborhood and then ship them off to something so foreign, like driving 2, 3, 4 hours away because it's 4:00 in the morning. This kid got removed from their home and nobody's willing to take them. So now I got to take them all the way out here away from their school, their family, their friends. I think that's one of the most heartbreaking things. So I'm like always at foster care awareness events and different things like that, because I do think that we should place kids with who they look like and who they're comfortable with.
I know I said that I wasn't going to talk.
Nope, come on.
Shut up.
Yeah, I know he was going to talk.
Bree knew I was going to say something. All right. One of my pet peeves is seeing a brown baby, not because they're with a white adoptive family or a foster man. I don't care. So as long as you're caring for the kid, I don't care. My pet peeve is the brown baby that you tell the white parent just wet their hair and put a rubber band on the end and they mat it as nappy hair. And because they don't know anything about the hair care. Don't they have some type of like class to show them how to do this, or they?
Yep. So they actually do. So prior to working at CPS, I worked for what's now WellPoint. It used to be St. A.
Okay.
And I actually had a case just like this. I had these 2 little girls. They were African American, went with a Caucasian family. And that lady did not allow grease in their hair because she didn't want the grease on her couch. and I'm the visitation worker. And I remember I would just get so upset because their dad would literally like hire people to like braid their hair on our visits. They would be so cute. And I would go to pick them up the next week and their hair taken down. And the foster mom would take it down. She would wash it out and kind of like what you were saying, put the little water on it. Now they got this little matted fro that's sticking to their head. And I remember I went left with our team from work. I was like, this is ridiculous. How can we continue, especially when you have kids who are older also who have to go to school?
Oh my goodness.
So now I'm going to school. Now I'm getting ribbed. Now people teasing me. They already saying my mama white and or your real mama a crackhead, this, that. So I know for sure, and I almost want to say children has it too. They have mentoring coaches. So when you take kids in your home that are not within like the same ethnicity, race, different things like that, they have where they teach you about like the food, the hair, the whatever, and kind of educate people a lot more because we've seen a huge rise in it. Like I said, I had a kid on my caseload. Her hair was literally falling out all because she wasn't getting it greased and washed. I'm talking about like falling. It was so saddening. And I'm literally like, I called one of my homegirls and I'm like, look, you got to come braid this baby hair. Like, I know you can braid over this one little ball spot she got in the back. And we literally sat at the office all night and I wouldn't place her with her foster care family until her hair was braided because she had to go to school the next day. And when she was at school the day before, she kept getting in trouble because she wore her hood. And the school was writing her up. And I'm like, nobody thought to ask her.
Like, why do you got keep your hood
on? Like, you constantly saying, like, get your hood off. Oh, you don't want to take your hood off. Are you disruptive? Or are you being, disobedient or different things like that? So I'm always conscious about asking the whys because kids often do things as a reaction and not just the action. So asking them, like, I'm like, why you got your hood on? And she opened up like, my mom pulled my hair out and I have a spot in the back and I don't want anybody to see it. And I was halfway. She knew how to braid her hair too. She was halfway braiding her hair. And I'm like, girl, I got a homegirl. I bring my homegirl to the office. We braided her hair. We like went to Target, got her some like cute little fits real quick in the middle of the night, and she was good to go. But that confidence goes a long way, especially in Black little girls.
Yes,
like that little confidence where people was like, oh, it shouldn't have been no big deal, or she could have waited. No, like that confidence goes a long way. Boys with haircuts.
They look totally different.
Boys do the same thing. They covering up and they lining bad, or they ain't had a haircut. It's matted. And I just realized how much that counts for.
Man, do you know how good I feel when I come out the barber shop?
I was gonna say, us as adults. The first thing I've seen it on TikTok. Your boyfriend, you finna get your hair done. You better come home. I'm outside. Yeah. Somebody gotta see this.
It's definitely a confidence. It's a confidence thing for sure. So that's something I know they put in the works and that I follow up with for sure. If I'm placing with the family of, this is
foster care, but yeah, I'm assuming that this was like more so like they adopted them based off of the interaction I saw. So they don't have to adhere to any of that stuff once the adoption takes place.
So technically, no, because they don't have workers and different things anymore like that checking up on them. But for me, and we've kind of went through this debate before, which reminds me, I'm glad you reminded me to follow up on this. I had raised the question of how isn't that abuse?
I was about to say, how come that cannot be charged?
That's mentally abusive. I feel like to me, because you're breaking down my self-esteem.
Yeah. So we've talked about that before, and it's kind of been on the table. I've actually like went back and forth with a couple DAs about what they've thought and like kind of looking and seeing into that. So thanks for reminding me of that because now I'm ready to go back. And I'm like, let me ask.
So when I used to be an administrator for school, and there was one young lady who was adopted. Well, she was a foster child of a white parent, and this was a real strange interaction with the parent, and you could tell the girl was really trying to get her attention and trying to get her to like be attentive to her, and she was kind of like, come on, let's go, walk out the door. And one day she had decent hair. It wasn't a problem. And one day, I guess because he was giving her such a hard time with her hair, she took her to the barbershop and cut it off. Had a little fro. I'm like, and I had to talk to her. You can't do that. Why did you do that?
Yeah,
that's insane.
It still hurts because I think I saw recently, it was like within the last couple of years, within the last 3 years, the girl got sick and I think she passed away. It was like on Christmas. She had some kind of illness or something and she passed away. And every time I think about it, I'm like, it was something strange about her interaction with her that made me like, what?
Think twice.
Yeah, it just makes me feel bad. But yeah, she cut her hair off. and sent her to an all black school, like
People can be evil sometimes.
Yeah.
fifth grade. That's the worst time.
So speaking of that, because of course there are some certain cases that just stick with you. What's one case that you feel like kind of just like stuck?
It's a many of them. When you say stuck, do you want me to give you one that stuck with me and it was a good example, like I keep it dear to my heart, or one that kind of like really almost broke me? We can go either way, both ways.
We can do both, because I feel like it will be helpful for people to see the positive side, because I don't want people to think that it's all negative with social work or child services. We're gonna be realistic and real.
No, I appreciate
transparent.
That. So let's start with the one that broke me first. I'll start there first. There was a small child. I want to say she was like 5 months. We took her to the emergency room. The baby had burns galore all over her body. It looked like literally she was being a human ashtray. And I remember seeing them all over her body, but she was the happiest baby ever. You would have never been able to tell that like people was putting out whatever they were putting on her. They never got to the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
But she was the happiest, go luckiest baby ever. And when we have babies, we send them through x-rays. So they get what's called a skeletal.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a skeletal exam on this kid. And it came back that she had a broken clavicle, broken ribs, and it was like something in her foot that was broke. Now, mind you, I've held this baby in the ER. We've played. She talking to me galore. La, 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 la. Biggest cheeks, eyes. I mean, the cutest baby ever. And I really just sat there. I'm like, who would have the audacity, the urge to do this to any kid, let alone a baby who was
like what type
totally
of self-hate?
Defenseless. And unfortunately, the mom was a very young mom.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was younger than 22. She maybe had 4 or 5 kids. But that for me was a red flag. I was like, you that young, you got this many kids. That was a red flag. And as I began to look into it, she had traumas of her own too. So what ended up happening was she would allow others to just watch her baby.
Like whenever she can get a break.
Yeah. So we joke around a lot of like, somebody like, oh, who can watch my baby on Facebook? No, this was that mom for real. Like, who can watch my baby? And we're asking her the names of who's watching her baby. And she give me like, Rayshawn never getting money on Facebook. And I'm like, well, what's her real name? And she's like, I don't know. Rayshawn get money. Like, and I'm like, there's a disconnect. She had a lot of trauma history, which I think ultimately just allowed her to be just like whatever she gave her body to anybody. She didn't care. She started to have these babies. She started giving these babies away and letting them be with whoever, and they were just all over. So that for me was just like a wake up. Because I'm like, the stories that a lot of us joke about, like, oh, someone's all going to get on Facebook and ask, they real. But it also gave me like this is why I do my job. Right. Because this is the stuff that happens that might not make it to the news or Facebook or whatever it is. And a lot of people see like the tragic stories that happen once they get to Facebook, like the kids who were locked up in the room for all that time and different things like that. It's a million more cases just like that just didn't make it. So that was probably one of the stories that I'm still like, I still see the little girl face in my head every day.
I was gonna say, you see my face over here right now. I am flabbergasted. I could not imagine.
Day.
I'm big on elderly and babies.
Yeah.
Please find somebody else to fuck with.
That was
you have to have so much self-hate.
Yeah.
To do that to somebody that's defenseless.
Yeah. So that's one that was one that really, it took some almost like I kept just telling my supervisor, like, I can't stop thinking about this baby. Like, even after I had transferred the case to the next worker, I'm like, I'm just worrying about it. And then I had another case, and it's funny because on this other case, I end up having to take custody of this lady's children. And she had 4 children. And her family had been trying to get help for her. She had ended up getting laced. So she wasn't always this way. And it did what we believe triggered her mental health.
Okay.
And she was like, when she first met me, she was so far gone. She was like identifying me as like a relative and like just saying off the wall stuff. Then she told people I was her wife and just like the most bizarre stuff ever. And I remember I kept putting in resources. I kept trying things with her. Her family was like, look, it's not going to work. Like, you might as well just go ahead and pull the plug. Like, the kids need to go. And I'm like, no, I'm going to let her. I always tell people I'm going to let people burn their hand themselves.
Right.
And she did. She burnt her hand. She burnt her hand. That lady was like, F me, this, that. She cussed me out. She would grab her kids. And I remember the day that I had to go remove them. I had to have 6 officers come with me because I knew it wasn't going to be pretty. And at the time, she was staying in the shelter. So I wanted to make sure all the other kids that were within the shelter kind of, were put back and different things like that. And it was probably one of the most heartbreaking TPCs, which means temporary physical custodies, that I ever took. The kids screamed. When I say it put me in a scene of, you remember the scene Losing Isaiah?
Yes.
And he's in that restaurant. And she's feeding him, and he gets up and he's like, I want my mama. And he's running and he's taking off. Promise you, the little boy did the same exact thing on me. And it's 4 of them. 3 are under 3. 1 is 9. The 9-year-old is super, super, super parentified. Like, I mean, beyond parentified. And he literally, the smallest babies are like screaming beyond belief. I'm talking about till they can't breathe. Like, I'm almost thinking I got to call a medic because they screaming for their mama. They love their mama so much. And I get in the car and I'm like, it's me and a coworker, and I'm trying to process myself, push myself through it. I'm asking the kids, like, are you okay? And they're like, no, we hate you. They kicking the back of my seat. They throwing things, and I get it because y'all little, y'all don't understand this. All y'all see is that this lady who once was helping us
is now taking
us away. And I remember just crying. I cried the ride all the way back to our building. We got escorted by the police, and that was the first time I had ever cried while taking children. I'm steady trying to wipe my face in the front seat because I don't want this 9-year-old to see me crying and ask me like, well, what are you taking us? Like, what you crying for? So I'm like playing it all together. And the next day, the mom calls me. And when I answer, her tone and her voice is just completely different. She went from like, cuss me out, I'm every B word, this, that, I'm gonna kill you. I have people on the streets looking for you. And she told me it was at that very moment that her kids, when they finally got taken, she said, I finally got the break I needed to get the help that I needed. But I was too afraid to say it to people because I didn't want them to judge me for not having my children. And when I say that lady opened up to me, we were on the phone for 4 hours. I'll never forget. I'm typing up her court document. And this lady is literally just venting. I mean, she's pouring out. I'm not even having an okay in between or what. I'm not even saying anything. For 4 hours straight, she's literally just going like, and this happened to me. And then this is when I turned this way. And my family does do this. And I know I'm off. I haven't always been like this. And one of the biggest things that stuck out to me was that after she had like lost her employment and different things like that, she never went to go get unemployment. She wouldn't go get food share, like all these government assistance things she wouldn't go do. And for me, I'm sitting there, I'm like, that's craziness. Like, you need it as a stepping stone, you need it as the help. And she explained to me that she had always been a person of, she was going to get it on her own. She didn't need the government, this, that. So it made a lot more sense after she explained it. And I told her I was glad that she opened up, because now I can put in your court document that you just believe that you're supposed to get it on your own.
Right. Like,
but she was in such a deep depression. She couldn't even see that she was drowning herself. She couldn't even see that she needed the stepping stool of those different things to meet the basic needs of her children, because she had gotten so far. And she literally, after that conversation, we went to court the next day. The kids were placed with her relatives. Mm-hmm. So she called me the next day after that. And she like, I just thank you. And I'm like, you okay? Is everything fine? She like, I'm finna get myself together. Like, she used to be a hairstylist. She showing me everybody hair that she did. Like, she was amazing. Like, and she like, I finally get a break to get back and do it. Like, she like, this was my breaking point. I needed you to take my kids in order for me to really realize that I got to get it together. And that for me was just like, sometimes the hardest moments are the best ones. Like, I knew that the kids weren't the best in her care and that they had to be moved from away from her, but with her relatives. But to know that, like, that was the light in the tunnel for her.
Right.
So now me and her coming up with like this 6-month plan of what can you get accomplished in the next 6 months outside of the visits? Because she like, I want to work. I don't want to be on assistance still. I'm like, well, you got all the time in the world now to stack your money to do whatever you can before your babies come home. And that probably was one of my like most detrifying stories, because for so many weeks when I was giving her all those resources and those chances, in the back of my mind, I kept saying, Lord, if something happened and this case ends up being the one that's on the news, I'm gonna feel so bad that I just didn't pull the gun at first. But then the human side of me was like, no, you give people their chances. Like,
Right.
you can't control everything. And I remember right after that, I ended up going to therapy myself, because I was losing myself at work. My supervisor was like, you not yourself. She's like, why do you care so much about this family? Like, what is it about them? And I'm like, because I know she wasn't always like that.
Right.
And deep down inside, she want to try. She want to get there. But her mental health that she's not addressing is just completely
It's blocking it.
blocking everything. So I actually caught up with her case manager not too long ago, and she doing like super well. She about to get her kids back. And one thing I tell all of my clients and people, because like I said, I am out in the community. Cortland plays basketball, so I'm at basketball games, I'm at high schools, I'm at community events. I go out. I used to bartend. I always tell them, like, if you see me out, do not be weird.
Like, please.
You don't have to tell people that I'm your CPS worker. You don't have to tell people none of that. Just speak and say hi. And they like, really, you sure? And I think that even piece of humanity allows for them to be comfortable.
Because we still people.
I got so many kids that have run up to me at a game like, Auntie. I'm like, yep.
Hey.
Like, who is that? My niece. And don't ask nothing else. A nephew. Don't ask. But I thought your mom only had 3 kids. And don't ask nothing else about it.
Listen, we can sometimes choose our family.
Yeah.
Family is who we create.
But I
So,
think adding that little piece of comfort for them, especially when I come back to school, they'll be like, oh, my auntie just came to see me at school, versus the social worker came in, like, I leave my badge in the car, and they're like, okay. So that's probably the brighter sides of the job, is like seeing those success stories. Because all of them aren't horror stories.
Right.
You got people like Ashley who have taken her struggle and what she's been through, because all of it ain't grits and gravy and the smiles and everything else. But Ashley doing so many amazing things. Like, I love her. And it's funny because me and Ashley went to middle school together.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing her to where she is now and everything she's doing for
Giving
like
back
foster
to
care
community.
awareness, and just, it's amazing. So those things are what truly keep me from quitting this job every day. Because some days I'll be like, nope, this ain't it.
Keep you going.
But understanding that people connect with me, that they're willing to open up, and that I can introduce them into resources that they might not never had a clue about, or just give them that sense of safety or that other look at CPS. I think is what keeps me going daily of going back to work.
So what happens with children who are, I guess, what is the term? Aged out. Yeah. What happens with
them? For children who age out basically means that you're in the foster care system. So you're under the care of the state of Wisconsin. You have not been adopted. Typically you're probably in a group home or something like that until you're turning 18. What a lot of folks don't know is there's a program called YTA. It's called Youth Transition into Adulthood. And typically what they try to do, I think it's either at 16 and a half or 17 and a half, they begin to gather these young adults and young individuals and set them up, whether that's for independent living, whether that's for going off to college, getting scholarships, the grants. If you're a ward of a state, you typically don't pay for school. So there's actually a program out there which is very underused. And unfortunately, I think it's underused because you got so many social workers who are overloaded with families and caseloads that referral doesn't always go through or gets transferred. Or kids get lost in the system, or you have kids who sometimes run away and then they never find a home placement. You just don't know where they are. But for those that do stay in their placement or stick around, there is a program called YTA. I worked really closely with them when I was over there at now Will Point, previously St. A. That gives them like they have an allotment of money. They help them go through like budgeting classes. Like, they really set them up to try to be independent adults. And that's something that I feel like doesn't get talked about a lot. A lot of people think that kids turn 18 and then they left on the stool step, and it's just like whoever get them where they go.
Basically
wherever.
Like homeless in some cases. They don't have anywhere to go.
And that happens when that transition doesn't happen a lot of the time. So you still get a lot of those kids who are homeless or don't understand. But I know they're working better to kind of catch that gap. I think now they have like almost like a roster of kids who are about to age out, and they start to reach out and kind of figure out where they are and what they're doing or what they're trying to do. and get them enrolled in the program, because it's a voluntary program for sure. So the kids have to be willing to abide by it. That's a big thing too. Sex trafficking. Yes. A lot of the kids, especially the homeless population, so kids and the group homes, I will say that as well. Kids who are typically in group homes as well as homeless face more chances of being sex trafficked. Sex trafficking is realer than real.
Man.
A lot of the times when I'm placing, especially my young girls and boys, because believe it or not, the amount of cases that come across my desk for sexual abuse for boys is growing just like the number of girls.
I think society makes it seem as if it can't happen or it's
Mhm.
foreign, because we always hear about the women, but it's definitely possible for a man to be raped, sexually assaulted, sexually
Very much
trafficked.
so.
So
Very much so. So they often run that risk too. And that's where I keep a lot of, for my young girls, in contact with them too, where I just always leave my contact information. Like if you ever feel like you want to run from this placement, like running ain't the best thing to do, especially if you don't got nowhere to go.
right.
Because the wrong person gonna pick you up, find you, and then I might not see you again. So when I place them, even in group homes that they may not be willing to go to, I'm like, you safer here than you is out on the streets. And the chances of you saying where you want to go or how you want to go, you can't do it if you ain't there.
Right.
So I preach that a lot to my young boys and girls who typically end up in group homes who are of that teenage age, because sex trafficking is real. We have a whole unit at our job that is dedicated to sex trafficking. Because there's so many kids that get sex trafficking. They actually go out and look for those individuals as well as their maltreaters. They work closely with law enforcement. But we also understand and know that when a child is being sex trafficked, they're often not honest about who their maltreater is, what's happening to them. Like they're very protective of their maltreaters. So that's something that we keep in mind too.
Okay. So at those moments, so like when you kind of feel like I can't do this, like it's becoming too much, how do you pull yourself like out of that feeling?
I tell people this all the time. Knowing that I'm a brown-skinned woman that has the ability to make life-changing decisions on brown-skinned children, and that there are still people within my employer, which I won't directly name right now, even though I've said it before. So rewind it if you need to figure that out. Make decisions that they know nothing about.
Right.
About our kids. That pushes me every day to still stay there and have a voice for those kids that can't be heard in the rooms that are making decisions about them. Because I just don't think it's fair. You can go through 1,000,001 gazillion training online hours of implicit bias and this, that. Them folks still go home to their same opinions, to their same husbands that got
set
the same
ways.
wife's thoughts, whatever, set in their ways. So I don't think that the trainings necessarily cure that. I think they do bring up some, if they're informational, but people have to be willing to receive that information. I know people who don't receive the information, just go about their day. So me knowing that I'm the loudest voice in the room, I don't care. I'm going to say what I got to say. Everybody at the job know I'm going to say what I got to say when it comes to my little babies. Realizing that if I quit today and that's not there, then what?
Right.
So that's what keep me going. But especially on the days where I'm like, I can't do this no more. Like it's been a good run. I can go do this over here for this amount of money. But it's not about the money. It's literally about the lives that you affect every single day. And knowing that our decisions, I tell people that all the time, we make life-changing decisions. You decide where a kid is going to be, whether a kid is safe. Those are big things. And I do not take their responsibility lightly. So understanding that I can play a role in it and I choose to play a role in it every day. Is what truly keeps me there.
We need you in the room, girl. Stay in the room. So how does being a social worker impact how you interact with your own child?
So for me, I think I have learned a lot. Thank you, Fendi. I think I've learned a lot about children and their growth. I often look at how, hey, Symphony, I often look at how privileged my kid is. And I really had to humble my daughter. I'll never forget. I had to run groceries to a family. I was going out of town and I'm like, I can't leave these people without groceries over the weekend. Like, yeah, I'm going out for Labor Day. I'm going to travel. Like, I knew I wasn't going to be there Monday. And I had my daughter come with me to go shopping. And we getting these carts full. I mean, we in Walmart. We the people that don't nobody want to stand behind. If I'm going to get you some groceries,
this might take a while.
Yeah, I'm literally going to get groceries, and I'm telling my daughter, like, well, what would you want to eat? Like,
Right.
What do you think the kids are like this one better versus this one? Like, we in the store racking up. And I remember she was so just like irritated. How long is this gonna take? I'm ready to go home. I need to go lay down. I got basketball practice tomorrow. This Cortland. Where everybody, Cortland. Yeah. And I'm like, you need to these people don't have food in their house. They're literally running an extension cord from the basement to even keep their fridge on. Like, I'm really explaining to her to the conditions of the home. And sometimes I wish I could take her every day to work with me sometimes and let her really see it. So the kids, when I got to the house, they ran out. And the look on Cortland's face, it just changed. And I think that's the moment she got it. That she understood that, like, what I got at home, everybody don't got. The kids are literally, I got these Walmart bags and I'm getting out of the car. The little baby, bless his heart. Y'all, he devouring the bag open. He like, oh, it's fruit snacks up in here. Like, he going crazy. Like, I'm like, baby, you can't take all this out on the street. Like, let's at least get it in the house.
Get it in the house.
Come on. And at this point, Cortland is like passing in the bag.
Like, here you go.
Here. And I remember she went to the doorstep. And unfortunately, the house was roach infested. She was like, we got back in the car. She's like, Mommy had bugs in here.
Stay outside, baby.
So she like, Mommy had bugs, And I'm like, some people live like that day to day.
Right.
Like, thankfully, you don't have to. This is why I complain when I say get the chip bag off the floor that's been sitting there for 2 days because I don't want bugs. So now I think it's so funny because she used to be one of those. She's really into shoes. Cortland, in the flick of a dime, my baby is a hustler. Okay. She will take some shoes, keep them clean. And she'll be like, I need to resell these. I can't fit them no more. So now she want to take them down to VT every rock. And I'm like, no, Cortland, we're going to give him. We're going to bless him to somebody else. Somebody once upon a time blessed you when I didn't have it.
Right.
But now she literally, when she grow out of stuff, she going downstairs to wash it. She folding it. She cleaning her shoes off. Ma, take this to work. Find a kid who this can help. Like, give it to them. Like, I don't want them to have to go to school and be bullied. And it's funny because there was a kid in her class last year who graduated with them. And it wasn't even that he was living in like unsafe conditions or anything like that, but his family just didn't have a lot.
Have it.
And Cortland at graduation, I remember nobody took a picture with him. You know how afterwards all the kids taking pictures, they got their little friends, they huddles, they whatever. Nobody took a picture with him. And I remember she called him over and she like, yeah, you gonna come take a picture with your girl? And he literally, like, his face lit up and he came all the way over there. And they took a picture. I still got it in my phone. And when he walked off, Cortland, like, he a 4.0 student, the smartest kid I ever met. Like, he's so grateful. Like, when I be bringing that extra little stuff in my lunch, like, that's who I be giving it to. So for her to finally understand that, I also felt like I was doing my job. Because my mom was like that.
Right.
Like, when we had our siblings, which were technically my foster siblings in the house, we were very humble. Like, mom, like, what they get, you get. It wasn't they in this house. They only get this little check. Y'all finna get that. My mama never treated us any different than each other. So I think instilling that in her is something that I'm finally getting to reap the benefits of. And she like, get this to so-and-so. You know anybody who could fit this? I'm like, am I the mom or are you? She like,
passing
you know
it down.
Who wear a size this,
How old is
that? She's 14.
14.
But I think just seeing that and her understanding, like, everybody doesn't live the lifestyle you live.
Right.
Some people aren't, unfortunately, able to, or some people gotta share different things like that to have your own rooms and not have to sleep on the floor. She's so much more appreciative of that. So I think that's another way that, like, my job brings gratitude to me, because I know that my kid is not one of those kids who feel like she's above everybody else.
Right.
And she has everything. She also understands the
My
other
spoiled
side.
ass kids.
I mean, we try to give kids what we didn't have. So
Yeah.
I bought my
But
daughter.
that can mess a child up though.
I bought my daughter a TV for her birthday a couple years ago. She's 20. I think it was her 18th birthday. I bought her a TV, and my niece gave her like a 40-inch, 50-inch TV when she moved out. So she put the other TV in the closet. My youngest daughter was like, "Hey, can I get the TV?" She's like, "No." Like, why not? Because it's mine.
And she wouldn't even be using it.
She wanted
like,
her-
give her the TV.
I was like, just give it a TV. Like, for real. It's like, no, it's mine.
Entitled, huh?
Right. This is like, it's mine.
It's
And you know
mine.
what? You have the right. It is yours. You're right. But that's fucked up.
My money just sitting in the closet.
Right.
So realistically, what are some improvements you think the child welfare system could make to like serve the community better?
I think we need to just get out here. I think that unfortunately for so long, they've carved this bad reputation. And now it's like we almost scared to get out there. I'm the one that's like, let's go to this community fair. They got something at the Sherman Phoenix. They got something at Sherman Park. Let's go here. Like, let's have a table there. And I remember when I first started talking about the idea, it was like, ooh, how you think people gonna review us? What they gonna do if we sitting at these tables? What if they ready to attack us? And I'm like, if you just be people with people, they'll be okay. I can't change anything that's happened prior to me. I can't even help what's happening now with other workers.
Right.
But what I can do is give them my perspective. What I can do is give them the information and knowledge that's typically not shared. Something as simple as me explaining to them how a call-in works, how all of our calls aren't screened in or screened out, what that time frame looks like, how long somebody can have something open, how they can go back and request their own records and use them potentially if they have like a custody court date or different things like that. So educating our community that way is probably one of the biggest things I think we immediately can do. Is getting our face out in the community.
Right.
And having it to where we're partnering with the community and not being an enemy of the community. And then another thing I think we could do is hold each other accountable as far as like our staff and our workers. There is a grievance policy for almost anywhere in every business that you go to. It's often not one of the most things that's talked about, but I tell my clients right away when I walk in their household, if you feel like I wronged you today or I did something wrong to you or my approach or, something was out of order, you're more than welcome to call this number to make this report and follow through with this person. I give them my supervisor information.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, what I get a lot out of that is they'll be then call my supervisor like, she was so nice and this, that. She's so personal.
You got to build
and you
that
get the
relationship.
blessings too from it. But I also let them know like, hey, you a person and this is a service. It's not a service that you grant, you went after and wanted or you paid for, but it's a service. And that if you feel if you know somebody who is being treated wrong or their worker isn't doing the same things that I'm doing, pass it along. So I think that's one of the biggest things is getting our information out there, making sure people understand what we do and we don't do. Because I think the other biggest thing is we get so many calls about custody and people don't understand that CPS is safety based.
Right.
People will call you and tell you that they baby daddy then kept their kids 10 days longer than they're supposed to in X, Y, and Z and get mad because that's not a CPS matter. That's a family court matter. And them putting the order into the matter, you got to contact the police to, do the matter or whatever. So I think them understanding what we actually do. And I have to oftentimes tell them like, if the kid is safe, then there's nothing I can do. You got family members who will take in kids, right? A grandma. Her daughter run off, do whatever in these streets, X, Y, and Z. And she been caring for this kid for 15 years. And now she want to call it in. And it's like, grandma, from day one, when this lady left and really showed you that she wasn't going to be there,
this is your child.
You should have called it in. And then you ask them the question of, grandma, is she safe here? Yeah, I'm make sure she got everything she need. I treat her like she mine. I ain't woo. There's nothing I can do. You're going to have to go down to family court and file for guardianship if that's what you truly want. So I think a lot of times people need to understand like what CPS can and can't do because they have this idea that everything child related is CPS. No, that's what family court, that's what custody, that's what child support and all that is for. We literally are for the safety of the children in that moment. Like, is this kid safe right here, right then, there, now? And that grandma cussed me out like, y'all ain't worth shit. Y'all supposed to be helping me. I'm sitting here raising this girl. I ain't got no money. I'm on a fixed income. She going off. And I'm like, if you want kinship of your granddaughter, here's how to apply for it. And I think if we put that information out there before, we would get a lot less calls and use a lot less of our resources into like vindictive calls and different things like that. I try to get people to understand that despite it being a vindictive call, we still have to do an assessment.
Right. We still got to check it out.
Because sometimes what sounds like a vindictive call isn't a vindictive call. Sometimes it's actually happening. And people get mad or upset. And I'm like, look, after I get done with this assessment, it was all fake, right? You're an awesome mom. Get a copy of me writing about you being an awesome mom.
Right.
Like if anything was to ever happen along the line, whether you got to go to court, something happened, your kid get to acting a fool, whatever it is, you got this document written by a state worker saying she assessed me in all of these areas, and this is what I did. So I always push people to get like, if somebody gonna write something about you and it's gonna be a legal record, get a copy of it. Like, I'm gonna get everything you wrote about me, said about me. Like, I want it all.
I
See,
got
the false
proof.
things are kept somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all kept. So if you got a false report that was made and we still come out and do the assessment, they'll give you a copy of it and you can request it. And especially you see a lot of that happening when it's custody battles.
Mm-hmm.
Like they about to go to court and then they report something like, oh, my baby daddy stole drugs out of his car when he be dropping off my kids to school. And then he be like, what? And the kids like, we ain't never, you asking the kids to describe drugs. They're like, I don't know. So I'm like, sir, get a copy of that. So when you go in there, it proves and it shows like, hey, they came to my house. I showed these people everything. I was transparent. I was open with them. Take that to court with you, because oftentimes it works in their favor.
So when working in a school, and I would feel like I was obligated to call something in just by any suspicion, just because, you know, you never know. But when I called it in and they investigated and found that there was no basis for the,
Yep.
Does the other person know that it was ever called in? Are they ever informed?
The person. So give me a more detailed example.
So if a student comes to school and says, last night my mama beat me.
Okay.
And then the teacher comes and is like, hey, Jimmy said his mama beat him. And then I was like, all right, well, are there any marks? Well, he's got a mark on his arm. Like really circumstantial shit.
No,
like, all right, there's a mark on his arm, whatever. All right, I'll call it in. Call it in, and then you get a letter like 3 weeks later saying there was nothing substantiated. Yeah.
Yep.
That's the only record of it right there.
Yep. That's the only record that the reporter gets.
Okay.
But that actual family member, so that mom who those allegations were against, she can get a copy of that whole report.
But does she just get it automatically, or she?
Nope, you have to request.
Okay,
it.
So even because if it's done anonymously, she won't even know that something.
That would never. We never disclose who the reporter is.
Okay.
So regardless of anything, a reporter will never be disclosed. I mean, some people put 2 and 2 together. Real easy, right?
Right.
Well, that's probably one of the hardest things about my job.
Hence the cussing out I received.
That's probably one of the hardest things about my job, because they like, well, who reported it? Like, somebody get into a DV incident, police get called, then I come out the next day.
It's like, you already know.
Well, who had? And I'm like, put 2 and 2 together.
I don't even know.
But we legally can't tell who the reporter is. So in that report, it never includes who the reporter is. And that's just for the safety of those who report, as well as doesn't really matter.
Right. It's reported.
Our job is to keep kids safe. So I just always tell people, get a copy of that. Like, I want a copy about everything that is written about
Thanks,
me.
Glo.
Literally. Thank you. Thanks, Bree. She the one who brought me out here. I've never go anywhere talking about my job unless I'm at work. And she definitely invited me out just to give that other perspective.
Well, you definitely have a spirit of maintaining like the integrity of the
job.
Like, this is what I do. But then there's a contingency of people who, because the revolving door of the bureau is swinging.
It is.
And I think some people forget why they got into it. Like you got to remember what the goal is.
Yeah.
Like you can't get lost in the sauce. And I feel like, especially when it's dealing with kids, whether you are a social worker, whether you are a teacher, I say this all the time, overworked and underpaid.
No,
but we need you and we
sure.
appreciate you. And you literally, it takes a village.
No, for sure. And I think one of the biggest things I always tell people, I do my job for kids, not adults. So adult cuss me out, oh well. Somebody mad because they reported something, no, well, I care about kids. My job ain't to care about adults, what they think, what they say, what they're doing. And I think that's what keeps me grounded in that. I care about the babies at the end of the day. Y'all can do whatever, cuss me out. I had people like, when I see you on the streets, I see them. I'm like, hey,
you be out here.
Was that all worth it? Like, no, it wasn't, because I'm still going to treat you with dignity and respect. My job is to always make sure these kids are safe. And if they are safe, tell me how safe they are. What are the amazing things that you're doing at home, so I can write this amazing report, and I'm going to tell you to go back and request it so you can see exactly what I wrote about you.
What's the longest tenure of somebody that you work with the Bureau?
It ain't long at all. Honestly, I would say people are typically there maybe 6 years.
That's a long
5,
time,
6. And that's on the like good long end. But I think you get people who immediately see like this ain't for me.
Yes, amen.
Like, let me go ahead and head out.
But it's frustrating. And I say that because our training is 6 months.
Wow.
So you get people in, you train them for 6 months. They get off for a month, they're like, yeah, I quit. And it's like, oh,
and it's like, now what are we supposed to do with
now
these
the
cases?
caseload's
All
back
these
out.
caseloads
Now
out
all of us
there.
back stressed. Now
Yeah.
it's all this stuff going on. So one of my main things at work, and it's funny because we had a new hire group come in today. And the trainer, the mentor guy, I'm one of the people who we can work hybrid. That's another thing that I think is very flexible about the job. It's really a hybrid job if you want it to be. Me, I need to go in the office. I need to be in a separate space. So I'm at the office every single day. And
Bless
the
your
mentor guy was like, if you got any questions, ask Courtney.
Right
She's
here.
always here. Like,
Right here.
she's an amazing person to ask. But I'm so adamant about keeping people, especially those of color who are coming into this and who like, I want to do this work. Like, what you need to get through this? You need me to take you to this lunch place right here. It's this, that. What you need? You need to vent somebody for the day. Come vent to me. Like, somebody pissed you off. Come talk to me, because I want to see more of us get into the field. And it is growing. Like, it's a lot of us at my job now. Me and my coworker were joking about it the other day because one of her clients is like, I did not expect to see you at the door. Like, and she was like, what does that mean? She was like, I thought it was the white woman in the van with the clipboard coming. Like, I didn't expect to see you. And when we were sitting there talking with one another, I'm like, we're growing. Like, we're growing and we're staying. And I think a lot of us have that same idea of like, we're doing it for the kids. Somebody mentioned self-care up there. We definitely listen. We will take our group and on a weekend be like, we going to happy hour, or we going to spa day, or we're going to my thing is traveling. Bria tell you I hit a flight and be
outside
somewhere in a quickness. But traveling is my thing that allows me to get away just for a little bit and then come back refreshed. So I'm not burnt out. So I'm not being the edgy worker who's like, I ain't gonna answer that call because I'm irritated or I don't feel like dealing with them today. But self-care is definitely one of those things. I go to therapy. I tell my therapist all the time about the hell that goes on at work, but also like the small wins that I gain and some of the big wins when things work out, because those are what motivate and push me. But I definitely believe in self-care.
Y'all need a CPS watering hole. Where y'all go drink? Where y'all be?
We do, and we don't have like a little spot. We definitely need a little
like your
spot
own
because, baby, some days you be like, and then we hit the group chat. I'm like, where y'all want to go?
Yeah.
Where we linking up at? So what's your end goal with serving the youth in your community? So like, what's the finish line look like?
I think the end goal for me is preventing children from going into care who don't have to, and providing their families with resources that may have never touched their doorstep. Because understanding that, yeah, there's resources out here. But when I live in a community or live in a space where maybe my mama don't drive, we catch the school bus, we stay within our little 4 or 5 blocks. And that resource that my mama really need is on the other side of town, but she worked 40, 50 hours trying to provide for us, bringing those resources to people's doorsteps. Because we can complain all day about what so-and-so should be doing, how they should be doing it. But when you logically go through with them of how they can get to that resource is one of the biggest things. And one of my pet peeves about workers is handing a sheet of paper to somebody saying, oh, here's the backpack giveaway. Here's the food bank. Here's the whatever it is. First off, not even understanding whether or not this parent can read.
Right.
Secondly, do I got transportation? It's 7 kids. I don't got no trans. You ain't seen a car in this driveway since you've been here. And you just expect me to get there? So that for me is like one of my biggest things. Like I'm asking like, hey, this is what this says. I'm reading stuff through with clients. This is what they're offering. What all do you need for the kids? Do you got a plan to get in there? Do you know how to catch the bus if you did have to catch the bus? Because we do have tickets at the office. Or sometimes even a lot of community events will have like vans and free rides that'll get people to these events. Do you need me to help sign you up or put you on this van list? Like step by step going through things with people. Because us as human beings, for some reason, just automatically assume everybody can read, right? Understand what you say. I'm going to interpret the same way as what she says.
We all were raised
and
differently.
That is not true at all. I can say, I'm feeling down today. You can think I'm suicidal. You can just think I had a bad day at work. And that's what I usually do or say.
And you could be feeling something totally different.
And I could be just like, I just said that because the girl in the bathroom didn't wash her hands or something. And people don't understand that you really have to break down and really like make sure people are understanding and comprehending resources, especially when you're giving it to them. And then my other thing that I also do a lot, because people say I overextend myself in my work, but I just think that's me and that's how God has made me to be. So I'm okay with that. Following through with the resource. So if I give him a resource, I sent you to this food pantry. I told you where it was at. You told me that you and the kids could walk there. That next week, hey, did you go? Mm-hmm. Did they have some good stuff, or was it just like the little crumbs and bums or whatever?
Find something else.
Because I think with that, you get to know if the resource worked or not, and you keep from giving out these foul resources that out here. Because let's be honest, every resource ain't the best, ain't a good one. So let's eliminate me giving out these cheap little resources who ain't giving out
nothing. Book bags ain't got shit in it.
People is stealing from the pantry. The people who working at the pantry stealing all the good stuff and they're leaving you the other stuff on the table. Like, let's make sure that the resource actually works.
Right.
And then typically what I do is I find a contact person or a connect at that resource. So what I like to do is a lot of the times, the first time we use a resource, I'll go with the client of whoever I'm going with. That way, when I get to that other client, I can tell them like, no, we went before. This is how long the line typically is. This is what time you got to line up. This time you got to do whatever X, Y, and Z. So I understand it. Versus just saying, here go this paper. Show up. You get it. You get it. You don't. You don't. Because there's so many people who just can't read, can't write, comprehend, understand. Don't even have a working phone to call the number on there to get on the list. Because maybe I'm using Wi-Fi for the time being to get by. Like, you just never know people's circumstances. So making sure you meet people at their levels and getting them to wherever it is they want to be is my biggest thing. I think is one of like my end goals is like meeting people where they at. And just making sure like what I'm giving them actually works.
It makes
sense. If it don't work, what else can we do to make it work or find something else that works?
I'm sorry if I offended anybody about the book bags.
Because I never want a family to leave like, dang, she just left us hanging. Like, where'd she go? And with that, I get clients who they just don't never want to leave me. I be in close their case out. Courtney, you know anything for this, that? And I'm like, well, you technically not on my caseload, but here go the information. Here go, call me in if it works. But that's just me as a person. I can't leave nobody on the cliff or just hanging or just say, hey, I gave him this pamphlet. Write out this report and say I gave him a pamphlet. And then, Lord forbid something happened. That's my worst fear. Something happened. Thankfully, none of my families have been like on the news. I haven't had any deaths on my cases. Like, I'm so grateful for that every time I wake up every day.
That's great.
But I also check in with them a lot. So, yeah.
Well, Courtney, this was a very informative episode. Like, seriously, the work that you do, again, I've been saying it throughout the episode, and I'm going to repeat it again, is needed. We appreciate you. Continue to do the good work. And hopefully you guys took a lot of things from this conversation today. I always try to, as a podcast host, I know a lot of people like the drama. They like the rah-rah. They like all that. I want to be informative. I want to let you know what's going on in our community. I have a friend who owns a group home. Again, I talk to Ashley. I talk to Marquise. We're not talking to Courtney. It's literally steps, and there is like a domino effect. So whatever information I can put out and give to you guys, if you're at home watching and you know somebody that's in foster care, you know somebody that's having a hard time, there is help and there are resources that you can use. Okay.
And even if you want to be that change, like he was kind of saying, there's always that revolving door. So many people don't know, like, you don't need a degree. And then like, I would have been did it if I knew I didn't need a degree. Like, I like helping folks. That's my realm of things. Like, if you need help applying with the application process, if you want me to send you a text when the application comes out, because they come out in periods for the state, I'm willing to do that too. So just let Bree.
I'm assuming they're hiring quite a bit.
Yep.
Quite often, I'm saying.
Yep. We hire quarterly. So 4 times a year, we're always hiring. The window for the applications, I believe, is generally like a week or 2. And then they close out because the hiring process in itself, I believe, is like 4 months. You do like the essay, the background, and this, that. So I always try to get people ahead of time. Like, even if you're not planning to quit your job right now, if you want to maybe quit your job in a year or half a year, starting on it now is crucial because it is a process to apply.
Are they located on the job, posted on WhiskJobs.gov?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We're on WhiskJobs.gov. Our actual office right now, for the time being, is located on 26 in Wisconsin. Yeah.
Okay. That's where all the state jobs are. WhiskJobs. WISC.
WISC.
Yeah.
So we're gonna end this episode with a good note. Y'all know I like to ask the little rush questions. It's kind of like a this or that game. I got some spicy ones for Courtney.
Okay.
So hopefully you don't kill me with the last one. I say the good one for last.
You good.
So tequila or cognac?
Tequila.
Tequila girl, Don.
Yes.
Don.
Reposado.
Don.
Give me brown. Brown. I like my liquor like my men. Brown.
Early bird or night owl?
I am a night owl.
Night owl.
Yes.
Okay. Netflix or Hulu?
Hulu.
Hulu. Passenger princess or behind the wheel?
Behind the wheel. I'm taking this everywhere.
Out the country or state to state?
Out the country.
PWI or HBCU?
Oh, HBCU.
Hey, let's go. Basketball or football?
Basketball.
Basketball. Summer or winter?
Summer. I'm a summer baby.
Silver fox or a youngin? You robbing the
Ooh,
cradle?
Silver Fox. I like
Woo!
a bold baby. Give me somebody seasoned.
Listen. Okay, you ready for this last
Show
one?
you right.
Come on.
You sure?
I'm ready.
It's the big one.
Come on.
Alphas or Q dogs?
Give me a cute dog.
Ruh, 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 ruh.
Give me shout out to the bros. Give me a cute. I'm a Delta. I'm gonna stay true to mine. I'm gonna stay true to mine. I'm gonna
Oh,
stay
that's
true
your
to
that's
mine. I'm
your
a
black car.
Delta.
Your black car. I ain't gonna expose.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm like, who dirty red up in here?
Yeah, that's me. That's me.
Well,
Yes.
thank you at home for tuning in. Now, don't do too, Tommy. Don't have me jump over this microphone.
Well, everybody can't be the first and the best. So
Oh, you alpha.
everybody can't be the first and the best. You know what I'm saying?
You alpha. Oh.
Hey,
We're gonna have to talk outside of this
Yeah.
live
when
recording.
When this all go off.
yeah. Just keep this. Alpha's got jobs.
Ooh.
Ooh. Okay, shots fired. So thank you guys for tuning in. Of course, always. Courtney, again, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
coming
for
and blessing the
having
podcast.
me.
Of course, of course. So y'all have a good night. I will see y'all next Monday and be safe.